Welcome back to Betoota Talks. We've wrapped up a big run of finals footy. We hope you enjoyed, the different voices we spoke to over all of that. Of course, we had Carolyn Wilson, a famed AFL journalist. We had Danny Weidler, famed NRL journalist. And, of course, we had Sandra Sully, who's come along and shared all the secrets of the dark arts that is, a lengthy career in news journalism. Today's guest is in the same vein, I guess. A newsman, a reporter, an author, has been of late delving in this new and exciting medium known as podcasts.
Yes, very exciting.
And he also spends his time following the stories of criminals and petty criminals, I guess you could say, similar to the AFL and the NRL.
Yes, similar.
What Sandra Sully gets up to. It is, I don't know how you'd rank the crimes of who we're going to talk about today compared to NRL players and some AFL players, but it's probably middle of the range.
Yeah, but it's also this stuff's exciting. You know what I mean? And interesting. Whereas, footballing scandals are pretty predictable. Sometimes they surprise you.
Smuggling reptiles. That was a surprise.
Who was smuggling the reptiles?
Martin Kennedy, I think it was. He was a Roosters guy. He got into the exotic animal trade.
It was. He got kicked off. He got banned from playing because of steroids. And then
how long ago was this?
This was 2017, and then not long after he stopped playing, it doesn't take him long to get into trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He gets caught with exotic animals in a suitcase at the airport.
Great.
How do you get into it?
Well, I'd say the people who were supplying him with the steroids may have hooked him up with a new line of work, smuggling exotic reptiles potentially. But let's not delve too much into that.
That stuff also doesn't require much investigating. It's kind of like, did you do it? Yeah, I'm done. I'm sprung. The story we're going to talk about today, sorry, I should formally introduce the guest, Tim Elliott. Thank you for joining us. Recurring guest on the Betoota podcast.
A real friend of the show, friend of DM podcast as well.
Yep. Last time we spoke, you just finished your investigation into the 12 tribes.
Yes, cult. A cult story, cult podcast.
How much more has come off the back of that?
I haven't been looking into it because I've been really busy investigating Darko Desich.
Yes. I'm glad you said that before I had to have a crack at that surname myself.
A lot of people say, I think it's Darko Desich.
Yeah.
With the
there'd be a lot of people that would say Desic, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, he would have been Desic. Now Desich for sure.
Darko Desich. Now, I want to talk about this man. I want to ask you some questions that are kind of, they're not really politically incorrect, but he migrated from Yugoslavia.
Yes.
What country would have that been in modern day borders?
Okay, so Yugoslavia was a group of all these different smaller republics. Slovenia, Croatia, sort of several different little, which kind of like mini countries, and they're all squished together into something called Yugoslavia, and that was run by a guy called Marshal Tito, who was a kind of benevolent dictator at the time.
Bit of a communist edge.
Yeah. A bit of a communist edge. And then he died in 1980. You'll have to check this and edit this. When did he die? He died in 1980. 1980. Right? But then by 89, that was all falling apart. And without him in charge, just shit went sideways, and all the countries, all those republics started fighting against one another, and all these different ethnic groups wanted to break away and have their own country. And
incredibly diverse. The multiculturalism of that part of the world, when you've got Bosniak Muslims, the white Muslims, and then of course you've got the Serbian Orthodox, you've got the Croatian Catholics, and then you've got different religions of within each country.
Crazy, and so it made a pretty volatile mix. And so Darko was from Croatia, which actually, as I learned, was one of probably the more economically productive of those little republics out of, what was it? Bosnia, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia. Croatia was really the powerhouse.
Well, they had the coast.
Yeah, they had the coast, this really cool coast that they could monetize tourism. And so as I gather, Serbs wanted to get a hold of Croatia, really. and get that money for themselves. And so there was a war between the Serbs and the Croats.
And we took in quite a few. Australia took in quite a few migrants from all those communities around the late 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And our 2006 Socceroos side was much richer for it.
Yes, yeah.
With our Zeliches and Bosniches and the like. We've seen it in tennis, and just about anyone who grew up in suburban Australia had a friend, from one of those backgrounds whose last name was either Itch or or
a Vic.
Or a Vic.
Yeah.
Where did Darko Desich? Okay, let's say Desi then. where did Darko Desich originate from in Croatia, and how did he get here?
He was from a tiny little fishing town on the Adriatic coast. He moved to a bigger town to get an education. Then he went to uni, studied engineering, did really well. He was then conscripted into the army, so everybody had to do a year in the army over there at that time. And then after the army, he was like, cool, I'm going to travel a bit. He took a year off to travel, went all over the shop. He visited Australia in the early 80s, sort of 83, and travelled around a lot up the north coast of New South Wales. Loved the north coast of New South Wales. There was a lot of bud being grown.
Yeah.
And he when he was there in about, I think it would have been 85, 86, he essentially learned how to grow weed really well.
Mm-hmm. Would have been pioneers in that part of the world at that time.
Oh, right? Yeah. So he met a crazy hippie he calls Chris, who flew hang gliders, and sort of Chris scouted out other people's crops from the air, apparently, and was often shot at by farmers, and crazy dude up near Coffs Harbour.
Yep.
And Chris, who kept a little collection of dried frogs in a box, very eccentric guy, taught Darko how to grow weed and commercial quantities of weed. But Darko then went back in about 88 and to basically see his dad again, made some money over there for about a year or two. But by 89, 90, the country was just completely falling apart and was like there was civil war on the cards big time. And he read that from a long way away. And he's like, yeah, shit's going to go crazy here. And he thought, where could I go? Well, what place did I like the best? And he's like, cool, I loved Australia, so I'll go back there.
Did he make money over there plying his new trade that he learned in Australia, do you know? Or?
No, I don't think he did. Well, I don't think he did. He worked, his papers always say, and he told me that he worked as a ship's mechanic on a ship that went basically from, there's an island off there. You'll have to check it out again, edit this, I guess. Anyway, there's an island off the Adriatic coast, went between there, and he worked on there for about a year and saved up a lot of money.
Right, gotcha. And he was an incredibly deep he is an incredibly deep thinker.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he was.
He wanted to study philosophy. He was a real big picture guy. Like, he wasn't your run-of-the-mill, stoner who decided to move into the profession, was he?
No, he was a really fascinating guy. Like, he loves Russian literature, really into philosophy, mind games. Favorite author was Dostoevsky, and he could quote Tolstoy, Dostoevsky to me at length. Fantastic classical guitarist, really good at computers, taught himself how to code. Like, he's a really, in the early days of computers back in the early 90s, he was fixing people's computers. He could turn his hand to anything.
So he sounds like a real character, the type of guy you'd like to be caught in a country cabin with drinking port and listening to.
Yeah.
Sounds like you got pretty close to doing that with him. But tell me, when does Darko drop off? When did Darko kind of disappear from the grid? Darko,
what happened here? He was growing in 1990. So he comes out here and he's doing a lot of labouring on the northern beaches, right? Sort of just And he works as a storeman, gets a job as a storeman.
So he's living up DY. Industrial.
DY, Avalon.
Okay.
And he's another thing about him is really hard worker. Like he was never a bludger. This is why everybody who met him had lots of time for him because he was super hard worker, really conscientious. So it was this bizarre combination of a guy who was really intellectual and switched on, really hard worker, labourer, and then also someone who really liked to break the law. And so what he did was he saw all these houses in Palm Beach that he was labouring on. He was like, well, these are really beautiful houses.
Yep.
And it's a really wealthy area.
The richest of the richest in Sydney.
Yeah, the richest of the richest beach suburb. And he was like, well, fuck, I want to have one of these houses. Why shouldn't I have one of these houses? And so he wasn't going to do that being a storeman, but he figured he could do what he'd learnt to do in the mid-'80s through this friend called Chris and just cultivate bud. So he started growing a lot, basically went up to the mid-north coast around Coffs Harbour, Bellingen, Dorrigo sort of area.
In the valleys.
Yeah,
the caches
north
between
of Crescent.
the crops.
Yeah, and started to plant a lot of dope. But he just completely failed. Initially, he completely failed.
Right.
And because rainforests are kind of very fertile, are very, very rainy, but not very fertile. So then I won't go into how he made it work, but he figured out a way of making it work. And he just was, and before he knew it, he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which back then was pretty good money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, halfway to the dream of a house in Palm Beach.
Yeah, a long way there. Yeah.
But did he get the house or before he got pinged? Or
No, he got pinged.
Yeah. And he goes away for what's supposed to be a couple of years?
They put him, his sentence was, because they caught him with 21 kilos. So back then about, I think, 200 and something thousand worth. And he was put in jail. There's an incredible story of how he was almost caught in the bush. And the first time, and he escaped, managed to run through the bush over hills, dropping bud everywhere, and massive bags of bud everywhere, and actually escaped the police in the first time, ran away through the bush, a bit like people we were just talking about, and made his way, and that was highly embarrassing. Like all the police documents to read is like, the perpetrator ran away through the bush and managed to escape. He was caught up with, though, about 9 months later in Coffs Harbour and caught this time and thrown in jail.
He got done.
And so he was imprisoned for, it was only about 4 months. It was only about 3 years and 8 months. So he could have done it, but the thing that really freaked him out was because he was super fit and really good at judo, hapkido as it happened. What really freaked him out was that by that stage, civil war had broken out in Yugoslavia, where he was from.
Yeah.
And the government was saying, right, when you finished your sentence, we're going to deport you. And so he was like, that can't happen, because there were literally tens of thousands of people just like him getting tortured and shot in the back of the head. So he was like, I'm not going back to Croatia, no way. So rather than finish his term, he decided to escape.
Now, we won't go into what he did to escape because, you've covered this in great detail with him on your podcast, which our listeners can choose.
Jailbreak, The Secrets We Keep.
The Secrets We Keep. Jailbreak, The Secrets We Keep by Tim Elliott. But I want to kind of talk about life on the lam. Where does he go from there? I'm guessing it was Grafton Jail.
Yeah, it was Grafton Jail.
Yeah.
Did
he just put his thumb out on the side of the road? Or?
I didn't realise that how much planning was involved in, I was kind of like, you just kind of bust out, however you bust out.
Yeah.
And then you take up your life on the lam.
Yeah.
But actually there was a shitload of planning involved. Like, you have to get from the prison to the next place, and you can't just start thumbing a ride. There's going to be cops everywhere and you'll be really visible. You need new clothes. You need a lift somewhere with someone you can trust. You need money. You need food. You need a new ID, all of that shit. So he had to do all that, which he did, which is the way he did it was quite fascinating, which you have to listen to in the podcast.
Chris picks him up in the hang glider.
And then he began his second life in Avalon on the northern beaches,
which you could do, and I don't think you could do it anymore, as Darko has proven in recent years. So, not living off grid, living in a community. Cashless.
The Insular Peninsula.
Yeah.
In the Insular Peninsula. So people do look after their own up there. And, it is, it should be said that, they're a pretty tight-knit community. But also there's always been an edge to the northern beaches, you know what I mean? A lot of characters, they're pretty rough around the edges because a lot of the money there is from people who work in construction and trades and that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily too much pearl clutching going on.
No.
So someone like that could kind of slot in, especially as you said before. He's got a work ethic.
Yeah,
as long as he's
it's a really fascinating mix. Like that area, the northern beaches. I live on the northern beaches, and it's really like, especially in there's still a bit of a hangover of this. And we speak to people who've been there since the late 60s, 70s. Very bohemian, Avalon particularly, very bohemian in the old days. Naked women on the beach on horses, and lots of dopes being smoked, and creative people everywhere dropping out, blah blah blah. And that there's sort of the tail end of that. There's the remnants of that still in the weatherboards and the back streets there, and the sort of the really like relaxed lifestyles and kind of hippie-ish vibe mixed together with this really new wave of new money, essentially, really super wealthy people who bought massive blocks there and converted them into these hideous, great, castles. And so there's a really interesting mix. And, the people servicing those castles and doing all the fences and all that sort of stuff are labourers who are salt of the earth kind of guys, just surfers who want to, hang out at the pub, work hard, do their thing.
Does Darko surf? Does he have a woman? Does he have a significant other?
He couldn't really. It's really interesting that he paid a real price for being on the run, in the sense that he changed his name for a start from Darko to Dougie. Yeah, became a entirely different person. Yeah. So when people would ask him where he was from, he was like, from roundabouts, do a bit of this, a bit of that. He's really, he just became expert at deflecting everything. And
did he have a fake country that he came from?
He probably could have actually, with the amount of sort of obscure, the way that the area completely broken apart, he probably could have made up some bullshit like that.
Russia.
I think, and also everybody assumes, up there that, everybody in those days knew so little about that kind of. It was all a bit. Is it Russia? Is it what? Is it Croatia? What's Slovenia again?
He's just an Eastern European man.
He's just an Eastern European guy with funny accent. Yeah.
It's not too monocultural up there. Like there is like a bit of an ethnic kind of enclave up there with Chroma, I suppose, and you've got. Got a few guys in the NRL that have come out of there, the Trebojeviches and that kind of stuff. So those last names aren't too. Not that Dougie was telling too many people his last name, but it wouldn't have been uncommon to have
Was Dougie a kept secret? Like, were a lot of people in the know in the peninsula that there was this guy and that was his backstory, or was he just the mysterious Eastern European man?
No, he was the mysterious Eastern European guy for many, many, many years. Because he was terrified of going back. Yeah. And I think he got stuck in this headspace of being like, if anybody finds out who I am, I'll be deported. And then, Yugoslavia for 15 years after that war was a really brutal place. Yeah. Like ruined economy, traumatized people.
Bullet holes everywhere,
Bullet holes everywhere, buildings smashed down. Like it takes decades to rebuild a country like that after that. And lots of lingering hatreds, lifting tension. So he was like, I don't want to go back there. Much less have to serve the remainder of his term. So he was super careful with who he told. In fact, he didn't tell anybody for a long time. And then people kind of put it together, I think. There was one woman, there was an article that had come out in a local paper in Grafton when he escaped. So a few people were like, hold on, like that Darko, and they just sort of started to, people who knew him, there were two people who knew him from before in the early 80s who'd become close to him who were still in Avalon. And they were like, okay, I think they had an inkling. And they were cool that they weren't going to dob him in, they were friends.
Yeah.
So,
How did he live?
he lived by working really hard, labouring all for cash.
Catching the bus or walking to all his jobs
Yeah,
as well, right?
walking to all of his jobs, no driver's license, no Medicare card, unable to get hospital treatment. He said it was a bit of a nightmare because he'd get really bad toothaches. And actually, we talked to a guy who used to room with him, used to share a house in Avalon. And this other guy said, yeah, it was really weird. He'd get really bad toothaches, but he'd never go to the dentist. And because he was terrifying of someone finding out who he was. And so he didn't have a Medicare card. So he'd pulled his own teeth out with pliers, So it was a really hard life.
So he's not anywhere. No one's taken his name. No one's.
No, he's just a Mr. Shadow. So it's so weird. You couldn't do that now.
It only ended not very long ago. What would he do in his downtime? You know what I mean? Like he sounded like he was, he loved his books, he loved his music. Would he ever go to the pub?
Yeah, I think he went. He said he had a few friends who'd smuggle him into the RE down there.
Yeah. Just sign him in.
You can't sign in, right?
Yeah. It's like, what did he do? He did a lot of. He's a pretty simple guy. Like he doesn't need a lot. Like he'd swim, fix computers for the local kids.
Yeah.
He taught his neighbours' kids Hapkido. He's a fucking good Hapkido martial arts guy. And bizarrely, he actually ran his own Hapkido studio in DY right next to the cop shop. So sometimes, in some ways, he's a strange guy. So in some ways, he was super vigilant and he'd never let anybody know what had really gone on. And, he was so afraid of being found out. And then in other instances, he was just really blasé and, he'd start a business up right next door to the cop shop at DY. It was like, what?
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, like it's a bizarre story.
Did he tell you? I mean, okay. Well, now I want to talk about how the music stops because the music stopped for a lot of people in 2020, 2021. We talk about this sovereign citizen movement, and what it really has done is exposed how many people were only just keeping it together before they got locked down. Before some sort of barriers or at least their lives that were kind of hurtling towards whatever, and they were living perpetually in chaos.
Yeah.
When that hit a movable object, a lot of people kind of went a bit crazy. That didn't happen to Darko, but he did get found out by the pandemic.
Yeah, he did. Because what he was doing was working for cash.
Yeah.
And, and another factor was that, so he was working for cash and people didn't want labourers. He became a really good stonemason. Yeah. People didn't want people coming into their houses and fixing things and mucking around with the stone on their floor or their flagstones or repairing their walls during COVID. People didn't want people everyone's bunkered down, right? So he stopped getting jobs. Yeah. And it was really sad, he had to start. And also a big factor was rents, if Avalon, it's like, it's just super wealthy now. Yeah. So he'd gone from he'd been there since the early 90s to now, early 2020s. And the cost of living there just went nuts and he couldn't afford to live there anymore.
He didn't get JobKeeper. He couldn't get on any benefits.
Exactly. Yeah.
He couldn't get on any benefits. And I imagine a lot of builders that would have used him were relying on JobKeeper to pay their crews at that time. So, that no one could really...
Yeah, really hard. I hadn't actually thought of the whole JobKeeper thing. Yeah. I mean, how that kept a lot of people afloat. Yes, he couldn't rock up and say, I want my JobKeeper.
So he puts on a tie. What happens? He put on
He got dressed up in his best stuff, and I think he was exhausted, and he'd been living reduced to the house that he was living in North Ave got bowled over, demolished, and he just didn't have anywhere else to live, and he ended up living in the sand dunes for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right.
And it, over winter, and I think he was really freaking cold and tired and hungry, and he just had it, It was
How old is he? How old is he at this point?
I think he was probably about 54.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
54,
And thankfully,
55.
international travel was shut down at that time, right? So they're not putting him straight on a plane.
Yeah. So he couldn't. That's
sending
a
him
good
off.
point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Listening to him speak to you, there's obviously a romance in this story, but as you pointed out, he did it pretty tough, and there was some obviously very hard times pulling teeth out with pliers and sleeping in sand dunes. His voice, the way he speaks, he doesn't. I'm only a couple episodes in, so maybe this changes, but he doesn't sound particularly bitter or resentful or filled with hate, I guess.
No, he's very equanimous.
Yeah.
It's like, well, shit happened.
He's philosophical
He's
about
very
it, right?
philosophical.
Yeah.
Like, I made my bed, I really blew it. I made a couple of pretty big mistakes. And so he's never dodged. Another thing that people found really appealing about him is that he never blames anybody else. He never blamed anybody else for growing heaps of dope. He never blamed anybody else for getting put in jail. Certainly didn't blame anybody else for escaping. So he sort of takes full responsibility. He's like, well, that's life. I had a pretty cool life in many ways. It's been an adventure, roller coaster. So why would I? He never resiles from anything. It's really weird. And he also, I think, sees everything as, a new horizon kind of thing, like.
Did you find yourself really getting on well with him?
Yeah, he was a weird guy. Like at one stage he said, don't sit too close to me. Like when I sat down, he said, yeah, I don't like that. He's got he's got a bit of a bristly aspect to his demeanor, but then in other ways he's very, he could talk about Dostoevsky forever. and also philosophical mind games, like the riddles and stuff like that. He loved, there's an old Greek Aristotelian myth about riddle about the frog who jumps toward a wall, and every time she jumps half the distance. And so, when does she get to the wall? Never. It doesn't matter how long she jumps. She will never, ever reach the wall. All these sort of things. He loves to play around with his head and discuss, and what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So he was really...
Sounds like you would have done well in jail.
Yeah, he did. He did. People loved him in jail. People really loved him. All the wardens loved him. I spoke to a warden there at the time and said, wow, Darko was a really cool guy. We really wanted to have him in our section.
We won't talk about how things ended for Darko, because that's another thing you can reveal to them on the podcast. But did you speak to the cops? Tell us about that day where he puts on his best kit and he just... the music stopped.
The music stopped. So he rocked up to DY. He was exhausted. And he had a mate drive him there, and he walked in and said, I want to give myself up. And they were like, for what? And he said, I escaped from jail 30 years ago. And they were kind of like, okay, sure. And tried to look him up, couldn't find any record of him. And he was like, but I've been on Australia's Most Wanted. He was on Australia's Most Wanted in the mid-90s. And he's like, I've been on that program. I've been on Australia's Most Wanted. You want me? I've escaped from jail. And they were like, no, I think they just thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
Because he would have come across as a crazy guy. And also, who hands themselves in after 30 years?
Yeah.
What has he been doing for 30 years? Leading this double life, and how did he escape? And what? And then finally, they went, holy crap, he did do it. He did all this stuff, looked into it and seen what he'd done and went, oh my God.
So then he gets his name back. He gets
his name back.
Did you say there was relief in that?
I don't know. Maybe there was relief in it. He didn't discuss that, actually, interestingly enough. He I think he'd opted to be Dougie in many ways.
All right, Dougie from the beaches.
Yeah, I think he'd kind of grown into being Australian, and he liked it. People accepted him. So probably, I think he quite liked being Dougie.
And he got a new lease on life, really.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. everybody up there. He became this massive folk hero up there. There'd be free Dougie signs everywhere, free Dougie bumper stickers, and I love Dougie. It was just
and it sounds like because he had developed such a rapport with some of these locals, particularly on these big jobs he was working on. Did rather important people come out in support of Dougie?
Yeah, some really very wealthy, important people came out and supported him. A few that I won't mention, but there was one guy in particular who developed a very large mortgage broking company and he helped him out a lot. And he wanted to remain kind of anonymous, but he had properties and horse studs in the Hunter Valley, and he put him up there and got him out of the limelight because Darko started to flip out a bit with everybody going, I want a piece of Dougie and you're cool, Dougie. Can I hang out with you? And and sort of parading him around at society parties in Avalon. So I think he was a bit like, whoa, what's going on? He's just, and that was another fascinating.
He's been fighting to get into the RSL for the last 30
exactly.
years.
And then suddenly everybody wants a piece of Dougie at their glamorous party.
And he doesn't like sitting too close to people.
Yeah, he doesn't like sitting too close. Yeah.
Well, we'll redirect the listeners now to go find that, and you can hear about the life and times of Darko Desich. Sounds like a very colourful life. How many episodes did you do?
6.
6.
Yeah.
And have you, much like your 12 Tribes podcast, when information starts flowing in, have you started getting feedback from people?
No, not so much because it only came out. I think people are like, actually, I'll have to look because I've been. I haven't actually had time to look at all the feedback. But there's been 1,000. It's gone nuts. There will be stuff on the feed. But I haven't actually looked at it.
Yeah.
It's been
sounds like it's
doing
all
my
just,
day job because I've got a fucking day. I've got work at Good Weekend the whole time. So and I'm trying to fit all this around it. So.
It sounds like it's just going to be nothing but feedback, good feedback.
Yeah.
Like, hey, mate, you did a great job as a stonemason in our kitchen.
Yeah. There's been a lot of people who got on to when he first came out and they were trying to fundraise for him. All these people came out of the woodwork going, yeah, free, keep Dougie out of jail. He's got to fix my fence when he gets in. All that sort of stuff. I haven't been able to fix my brushwork on my fence for years.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, the secrets we keep, Jailbreak. The link will be in the show notes. It's a great podcast. People can get around it. I know journalists, it's very hard to reveal what things you might be working on, but you always have fascinating projects, Tim. As we said, 12 Tribes, this new podcast. Any little scoop on what the next podcast might be or what we can look forward to?
Not really. I'm actually doing an interesting story on graveyards. I didn't realise that grave burial space is running out around Australia. Sort of different ethnic groups are horse trading for different pieces of allocations. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. Anyway, that's... just doing that now. Very interesting story.
There you go.
Yeah,
keep an eye out.
That I'm going to be sinking my teeth into that because I even noticed that when you do go to a cemetery, you see it's broken off into ethnic groups now.
Yeah. Look at it. It's a really, really cool story.
Yeah. Right.
And no, go on. No, I was going to say, and the way like the Catholics might have a chunk of land they're not really using way up the back of Rookwood or something. And so the Jews will go, oh, look, do you mind if we've got a lot of people died recently, a big cohort or the Muslims will go, we're having a real rush on deaths at the moment. Yeah. So we need some space. And they'll do this weird horse trading with...
Really?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
That's great. I know the Armenians have their own, what do they call them?
Mausoleums.
Mausoleums, yeah. And then you've got all different cultures do their different ways, and some need a bit of space.
Yeah, some need more space than others.
Yeah. Well, I'll be tuning in for that too. Thank you for joining us, Tim Elliott.
No, thanks for having me.